go first. Who would you take number one overall?
For me, I'm looking at Zaccharie Risacher. I think that this is the only guy with the number one pick that I would really be like, okay, cool. I think you did something that's going to, at very least, produce a high level NBA player here. There's a lot of other talents. Let's not get it twisted, and we're going to talk about a couple of them. But for me, I think Risacher, he just fits exactly what the Pistons need. He's 6'8", 19 years old. He shot pretty dang well from outside in EuroLeague. I mean, let's see. I have his stats in front of me. For his career, 207 three-point attempts. He's shooting 40%. I know he didn't shoot as well from three this last year, but like he has way more of a track record than any of the other guys who are being mentioned at the top of this draft in terms of shooting. He fits another need for them. Like, I think you can slot him in at small forward or power forward, which we've been talking about the lack of wings on this roster for how long? If you can put him, and he's a slightly less athletic, explosive player, alongside Thompson, I think you're instantly looking at a front court that is deadly defensively. Risacher, to me, is, I know a lot of people love Alex Sarr's defense. I think Risacher has probably more defensive upside in terms of what like NBA players, especially on the wing, are asked to do. I think he could be a really, really useful piece for this organization. And even if he doesn't blossom into a superstar, like I said, he fits that need. You need wings. You need talented wings. And the Pistons defense has just been so bad over the last few years. I think if you can put two guys together on that perimeter who can also bang a little bit inside, who can play a little bit of power forward, so you can go small or you can play big with both of them. To me, that's setting you up for a very versatile roster and one that can really work around a player like Cade Cunningham, who needs slashers, who needs cutters, who needs shooters. For me, Risacher is the only slam dunk at the top of the draft for me. That being said, there are other interesting players. I just think that he's the only one that really fits what I'm looking for, unless you're a big fan of Alex Sarr and you're really, really ready to move on from Jalen Duren.
Aaron, that's a softball of a segue.
It pains me to say this because I know the Pistons have such a checkered history using their first round draft pick on a player from France. But if I were picking one right now and had to make a draft pick, had to make a selection, Alex Sarr is my choice for the Detroit Pistons. And here's why. 7 foot tall, 7'4.5" wingspan, has a very good projection on the defensive side of the floor. Somewhere that if the Pistons are ever going to seriously get better, they have to improve on that end. One of the biggest pain points this year was this team's interior defense led under Jalen Duren, which was very, very poor. Sarr projects to be really, really good defensive big. There's a world where he can play at the 5, obviously, but there's also a world where he could play at the 4. That's probably more dependent on him extending out with his range and becoming more of a shooter. He can do a little bit, but he's not a three-point shooter yet or anything like that. But there's a world where you can make him and Jalen Duren work down the line, and this pick could also serve as a motivational factor for Jalen Duren to either, hey, you're figuring it out here, or you're going to be coming off the bench, or you're going to be gone. So I think Sarr just has a lot of the intangibles that I think stand out the most to me in a draft that doesn't have a clear-cut number one guy or a guy with clear-cut star capability. He's got the size. He's got the athleticism. He's got the mobility. He's got the defensive acumen of a player that is going to have a good career in the NBA. There's the stuff he can do in flurries. He can shoot the mid-range jumpers, at times. He's comfortable bringing the ball up the floor, trying to go coast to coast, can finish at the rim, obviously. So, is he the flashiest number one pick? Definitely not. I think a guy like Risacher has more of that flashiness to him, playing on the wing, having some of the explosiveness that he has, having the 3-point shooting numbers that he has, despite going through a cold stretch in the middle of his season. But I think Sarr just is a little bit safer. His ceiling is a little bit safer, and he helps this team on a side of the floor where they really, really do need help. And one other thing that I'll add here is, if Troy Weaver's still around, if the Pistons are still operating with that mindset of, wanting to play two bigs on the court together, that potential is there with Sarr and Duren. It's not going to look good offensively, but it just would kind of fall in line with the Pistons' way of working under Troy Weaver. Despite that, meaning you're probably looking at a starting front court of Sarr Thompson, Alex Sarr, and Jalen Duren. Not that that's a lock to happen or anything, but the Pistons will go to that at some point if all three of those guys are on the roster next year. But that's another thing to keep in mind. The Pistons love that idea of playing with two bigs. Sarr projects as a guy that's going to be able to play the 4 and the 5. But it overall, I think Sarr is probably the safest option at number 1. And as scary as it is buying stock of a guy that the Pistons could use a first-round pick of that's from France, there's definitely no history that suggests that would be a bad idea. And there's definitely no history that has me saying that the Pistons should use the number 1 pick in the draft on a guy from France. There's definitely none of that out there, but I am saying it here. I think Alex Sarr should be the guy for the Pistons should they land the top pick in the 2024 NBA draft.
Well, I wouldn't have minded if they had used the number 1 pick last year on a Frenchman. I'll tell you that much.
Fair. Would have been nice.
Would have been nice. A Frenchman that won Rookie of the Year and was nominated for Defensive Player of the Year in his rookie year, which is insane.
Finished second, and I think you could make the very strong argument he should have been first. I was watching a highlight clip the other day of just players like dribbling to the basket and seeing Victor Wembanyama and going, nope, just dribbling straight back out to the perimeter.
Yeah. And I don't blame them. When he dunked over, who did he dunk over on the Miami Heat? It just Thomas Bryant. And Thomas Bryant looks back and is like, what do you want me to do? Just a freak. Last year's draft. You were so painful. They're probably going to get the first pick this year. So it's a good thing that we're doing this. Sarr is probably up there with my pick as well. Because I think that does allow you to move on from Duren and feel a little bit more comfortable about it. As someone who watches a dual big starting lineup, I for one don't want to watch a dual big starting lineup anymore, and I don't believe in it. Unless you have very specific personnel, like unless you're getting Dirk at the 4, then I don't think it's going to work. But that's a very specific case. So I'm going to go off the beaten path. I'm going to go with friend of the pod, Tim Forkin's favorite player in this draft, and that's Dalton Knecht. NBA Draft.net has him number 3. I've seen him go anywhere from 4 to 11 in a lot of mock drafts. And that's the other thing. When you look at mocks for this draft, they are just all over the place. There are guys going, like Sarr is going 3 in one draft, or 1 in CBS Sports. He's going 12th in another draft. It's just, it's insane. But I'm going to go with Dalton Knecht. I think he's the most NBA ready. And I'm operating under the assumption the Pistons are going to want to compete, or at least not be the worst team in the league, and put together good players. And they're going to want to do it fairly soon, like now, like trading Ivy Duren, get an NBA ready guy. And Dalton Knecht kind of fits right into that. He is older. He's already 23 years old. But he is probably one of the most polished players in the draft. He is a guy that you don't have to worry about with getting his own shot. He can handle that on his own, which some Pistons had some trouble doing outside of Cade Cunningham and occasionally Jaden Ivey. 6'6", has a pretty good wingspan. He's a crafty finisher. He's not afraid to shoot the ball. He can go up and get a lob. He's not a standout defender, but I think you're willing to take that risk with a guy who can go out and get his own shot, who's not afraid to shoot the ball, not afraid to shoot from deep. He gets to the free throw line at a pretty good rate. And again, he's more of a vet.